if you were ever to watch me design a game, it looks like I've had a stroke. It looks like I have had a medical emergency and that 911 should be called. And well, maybe I'm not going to make it because a lot of my design process is me. What's up, my friends, and welcome to the Board Game Design Lab. Today, got a little different kind of episode, doing a little Q&A, doing a little mailbag episode where I'm answering your questions. Recently, I put out a survey to the BGDL community, and one of the little questions on there was, hey, if you have a question that you want me to answer on the podcast, here's your chance. Write it down here. And over 100 questions came in, and I can't do them all. Here, I'm going to do 10, 12, 13, 14, something like that. As many as I can get to that I wrote down beforehand, things that just kind of jumped off the page. I was like, oh, I think I might have something to say about that. And so if you don't hear your question being answered here, I'm sorry. And hopefully I can get to it in another episode. I can probably, I can do more of these for sure. But some interesting stuff, some really interesting little nuggets in there, things that haven't necessarily been covered on the podcast or covered in videos. And so just wanted to answer those as best as I can. And again, these are my thoughts, my opinions. Your mileage may vary, but these answers are based on my experiences and just some things that I've gone through designing games, publishing games, and other. There's some other stuff in there as well. All right, the first one is there a point when you should move on from finding a publisher to crowdfunding a game yourself? The publishers didn't pan out, but the community is backing it. Okay, so this is an interesting place to be as a designer because you're thinking, okay, I want to get the game signed with a publisher who already has an infrastructure, a marketing system. They've already got an email list. They've already got the things. They've got relationships with artists and graphic designers, all the businessy stuff. But then things don't work out. Now, I've had this happen several times where I reached out to publishers that I really wanted to work with. I thought, I had a game that fit really well with their lineup, with their company, and things went, seemingly were going well. And then come to find out that I'd just been lied to over and over and over again, contracts that never manifested. You shake somebody's hand and it doesn't necessarily always mean something, even when you think it should. And so, I've been in this scenario, but let's kind of back up and look at things bigger picture and then kind of dive in maybe some details. So one thing to think about is, well, how many publishers have you actually reached out to, right? Because like I could have gone and found more. I mean, there's a zillion publishers out there, and so I could have just written more emails, right? Go find more publishers, go to more conventions, sit down, have more meetings with people. So how many people have you actually pitched the game to? And if it's a whole bunch and nothing is working out, maybe that tells you something. Like maybe this isn't a good product for the marketplace. Not even necessarily that it's not a good game, but if people aren't looking at your game and thinking and telling you and then offering contracts based on the fact that they think that this is a sellable, marketable product that can make them money, then you got to kind of take a step back and just wonder about that. Now, bigger companies are thinking more about the dollars and cents than you are, though, right? So if you have a game you've been working on for a while and you're really excited about it, you think it's good, right? You think it deserves to be out, on people's tables across the world. They're thinking, how much is this going to cost me to produce, manufacture the art, the graphic design? And can I make money off of that? As a designer, if you're thinking about doing this yourself, you don't necessarily have the same concept of things because you don't have to, because you don't have that infrastructure. You don't have all the different things going on that you have to make payroll. You have to pay people's insurance and their loadings and all the stuff that goes along with the business side of things. You're not thinking in those terms. And so when you think about the margin, it's very different than how they think about the margin as far as like how much can we actually make on this game. You might be thinking about it was like, hey, if I run a crowdfunding campaign and I get 300 backers, wow, that would be awesome. Where they would think, if we run a crowdfunding campaign and have 300 backers, this is a giant failure and we're going to, sink our company. Right now, maybe not in those terms, but, companies, especially as they get bigger, they need to scale up what they do. And so that might be contributing as well to what they're thinking, right? The economies that they're kind of playing out in their mind. So if you have a game that has a very niche target audience or has a very niche theme, it's kind of odd, it's kind of out there, weird kind of thing, then it might not work for publishers in general because you kind of have to go where the market goes. So that's another thing to think about, right? Is like, why is it that publishers are saying no? Why is it that publishers are not panning out? Is it because it's not a good fit for the market for them, right, at scale? Is it because it's just not a good game? Which I think you really, truly have to step back and receive that. If that is the truth, if that is the case, it's okay, right? We've all designed really terrible games, right? We've all put lots and lots of time and effort and energy and money and all that kind of stuff into something, and then it's just not very good. That is what it is. And so move on, learn from it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Maybe. But what you're saying in the second half of this question, the community is backing it. Okay. What does that mean? Does that mean you have an email list built up? Does that mean you have like a Facebook group, Facebook community? Does that mean you have a lot of followers on whatever platform of your choice? And like, what does that mean? They're backing? Because if you already have buyers, if you already have people saying, "Hey, here's my money," right? Tell me where to go to buy this thing. That's a huge thing. It's huge to publishers too, though. Like, speaking as a publisher, if a designer comes to me and they say, "Hey, I've got this game," it's like, oh, okay, cool. That's one thing. But if they say, "Hey, I've got this game," oh, also I have an email list of 1,000 people who are interested in buying it already. It's like, oh shoot, you already made my job so much easier, because now we can just tap right into these potential customers you've already built up, and now we all make more money. So that makes you more publishable as a designer with your game. If that's the case, if it's a good game, you've got a community, you've got people that want to back it, then the question really becomes, do you want to start a business? Do you want to deal with all the shenanigans, all the ridiculously frustrating, annoying garbage that goes with a board game company? The freight, logistics, the customer service, the finding artists and graphic designers and project management and all the things that go into the timeline and making sure people are getting things done on time. And oh, by the way, they don't ever. Basically, I've met very few people that in the art world that get things done exactly when they say. And I keep hiring them because I like to work with those people, but it's a challenging thing. So many projects get delayed just because the art gets delayed, because art takes a long time. So are you ready to deal with that? Do you want to go through all the fun of setting up the crowdfunding campaigns and the reaching out to reviewers and previewers and content creators, and there's a million things to think about. Do you want to do all that? If so, all right, go for it. If you kind of weigh the cost, there's an old book that says, foolish is the man who doesn't weigh the cost before he starts to build. So weigh the cost out. And if you still want to build, if you still want to create this company, publish your own game through crowdfunding, go for it. There are hundreds of podcast episodes that I've created and other people have created. There are a zillion blogs through Jamie Stegmeier's blog on stonemeiergames.com, through the Board Game Design Lab website. You'll find literally thousands of resources as far as this kind of thing goes. So the information is there, and then it just becomes you putting it into action. So all of that to say, go for it. I think you can do it. I believe in you. Let us know how it works out. All right, next question. What is your unique selling proposition of the games that you design? Talking to me, I assume. In other words, what makes your games special? So what makes my game special? So a while back, I realized I wanted to find a spot in the marketplace that both fit with what I enjoy designing and with what was seemingly an underserved demographic. And so I chose solo games. I was designing a lot of solo games at the time. There weren't a ton of solo games out there. It was pandemic-ish era, and so a lot more people were getting into solo games. And so I saw an opportunity there to create this company called Best with One Games. And so my unique selling proposition is it's a solo game. It comes in a small box. It plays in 20 to 45 minutes. That's usually kind of the sweet spot there. It's a $25 game typically. And so I am leaning more and more into that. And going into next year, I've got the Solo Game of the Month Club, basically, that I'm working on, where I'll crowdfund and publish a solo game every single month of the year, similar to the Button Shy model, where every month there's going to be a game. And if you're a solo gamer, check it out. It might be something for you. Every game will come in the same type of box. Actually, if you're watching this on video, you can kind of see the box that I'm going for, the format. This is what it looks like. This is the second edition of Hunted Kobayashi Tower. It's going to be the first game coming out, hitting crowdfunding on GameFound in January, and then it'll release just a few months later. So the cool thing about these games also is that they're already done. If you see it on crowdfunding, it is at least 99% done. and the files are ready to go. So as soon as the campaign ends, we go right into manufacturing. Like basically immediately, like a week or two after the campaign closes, when the money comes in, hey, let's hit the big green button on the printer. Let's get off to the races. And so that speeds up all the timelines. I'm also shipping directly from China. So that speeds up the shipping. We're not, waiting on the freight to then get to a fulfillment center to then be in the queue line for a while and then finally get out to backer. Just as soon as it gets done manufacturing, it goes to a fulfillment center in China and ships worldwide from there. And this works because the games are small, right? These small box games that don't weigh very much that you can ship internationally for not a crazy amount of money. It's still not the best shipping prices in the world, but it's doable. And so that's several unique selling propositions all wrapped up into one right there. Solo games, the time, 20 to 45 minutes, small box, easy to fit on a shelf. Shelf space is getting more and more it's getting harder and harder to find, right? The calyxes are out there getting fuller and fuller. And so when you've got these giant campaign games, these narrative driven miniatures, $100 games, where do you put that on your shelf? A lot more people are asking that question. Whereas you have a tiny, a button shy type of wallet game or a small box game, a lot easier to fit it on your shelf, fit it in your collection. When it plays quickly, it's easier to get it on the table and play it, multiple times. When it plays with one player, you don't have to find other people to show up at game night. You just play it there by yourself. And so, those are all unique selling propositions. And then also being able to manufacture and ship and get games on somebody's table within 3 or 4 months after the crowdfunding campaign ends. That's another thing that I'm going for. So, as far as like you finding your own unique selling proposition, I think figure out first of all, like, what do you enjoy? Like if you don't enjoy a certain demographic, a certain target, a certain part of the market, then it's going to be kind of hard to sustain, right? So if you're like, oh, the market needs more party games, and you don't enjoy designing party games, I don't know. You might be wasting your time. Now, that doesn't sound enjoyable to me. The reason I'm doing this, the reason I'm in this industry and in this hobby is because I like it. It's fun. It's enjoyable. I'm good at it. Not because of the money and not because of, all the other things that kind of go along with like a business or a job. And so if you're going to turn it into a business or a job, I don't know, just make sure it's worth it for you. But, what are the things that are unique about the games that you design? Some people design amazing 3-hour Euro games, right? There's a certain part of the market that will spend a lot of money on gray and beige Euro games that are very thinky and don't have a lot of theme going on, but are very interesting to play. Lean into that, whatever it looks like for you. All right, the next one. What's the difference between a good designer and a great designer? That's a good question. Practice. It really, truly comes down to experience. Like anything else, any other art form, any sport, most professions, the longer you do it, the better you get, assuming that you're being intentional about the time you spend, right? If you just show up to work and you just stare at the wall all day, well, you're not getting better. So, if you're there for 10 years, all you've gotten, and that's all you've done, then all you've gotten good at is staring at the wall, right? So you have to be intentional. If you want to become a great free throw shooter, well, there's really no substitute for shooting a billion free throws, right? There's no shortcut. You just got to put in the reps, right? Just work your butt off, and you get better. Now, are some people predisposed to be better than others? Yeah, probably. We all have different things we're born with, different things that kind of these unfair advantages and things like that, and that could stretch across any number of things across the spectrum of life. But there's really just no substitute for putting the time in, putting in the work, putting in the effort. And the more you do it, the better you get, the more experiences you have, the more wisdom you gain, the more you learn from things. Like I said earlier, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, and you learn a lot more. This has been a year for me with a lot of learning, a lot of things that have not gone well, a lot of things that have not worked out as I had hoped or like I thought that they would. And with all of that comes a great deal of understanding, great deal of perspective, great deal of wisdom, hopefully, and different things that I can now go into next year and all the next group of experiences and have a little more knowledge, have a little better, understanding of different things. And so I think the people that we look at as the greatest game designers in the world, they've been doing it a long time, right? I think you have to stop thinking about it in terms of weeks and months and even years and really start thinking about it in terms of decades. Are you willing to put a decade into this? A decade or 12, 12, not 12, maybe 150 years old, are you willing to put a decade or three, into playtesting, into market research, into understanding what makes a good product for the marketplace, into design and different things? Are you willing to do that? And if so, then you have the potential, you have the opportunity to be great. Is it going to happen? I don't know. There's a million different things that could happen. But I think ultimately it comes down to that. All right, next one. How often do you wash your car? Man, I was hoping somebody would ask me this. This has been something I've been wanting to talk about on the podcast for a long time. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Some questions that came in were silly, and I appreciate that. Thank you for asking these silly questions. All of this was anonymous, by the way. So all of these questions that came in, I don't know who sent it, which actually reminds me, quite a few people, when I asked the question of who do you want me to interview? Like, who are some other designers? Who are some other people I should interview? A lot of people said me, not me as in Gabe, but me as in them. But the problem is the survey is anonymous, and most of the people that said I should interview them, they didn't tell me their name, email address, social security number. Like, they didn't give me anything, and so if you had a good idea, I can't reach out to you about bringing you on the show. So just be aware of that. Also, one person had a customer service issue and said, "Hey, I ordered a T-shirt, a Board Game Design Lab T-shirt a while back. I never received it." But again, no name or email address. So if that's you, if you're listening to this, you're like, "Oh, that was me. I need my shirt." Please send me an email. If you've already sent an email, send me another one. Sometimes things fall through the cracks. I'm sorry about that. I'll get it out to you. If you bought a shirt, daggum, I'll get you your shirt. I'm not trying to keep your $19 or whatever it was. So anyway, if you filled out something on the survey anonymously, just realize that I might not know who it was. Actually, I don't know. I have no idea. But anyway, back to how often I wash my car. So I don't really. If it ever gets washed, I might run it through a little car wash deal, like at the gas station or something like that. But I live in a tiny little town. We don't have a car wash. They're actually building a car wash right now. I drove by it a few days ago. They're building a car wash. They tore down an old rickety, I don't know, shack kind of thing over there next to Taco Bell, and they're building a new little car wash. So maybe I'll wash my car more often. If it does get washed, it's because my kids have done it, either because they were just trying to love me, just trying to serve, just trying to make me feel good about life, or they needed some money. And they said, "Hey, I need to buy this thing." And I'm like, "Hey, get you a job." And they said, "Well, what can we do?" And I was like, "I don't know, pull weeds." I don't want to pull weeds. Like, okay, wash the car. And so that's I don't know, a couple times a year. Next question: how do you make the leap from showing prototypes to your friends and family to showing strangers? That's a tough one. That's a leap. That's a leap and a half. How do you make the leap? You just do. I mean, there's no magic. I feel like a lot of times as creative people, we're looking for that like magic sauce, the magic bullet to, oh, this is how you do it. It's like, you just put it in a box and take it to the game store, or take it to a unpub, or a playtesting event or a convention, and you just sit down and you hope for the best, and it probably isn't going to go great. Maybe it goes okay, but and then you realize it didn't kill you, and then you do it again, and sometimes it turns out really bad, and you find a way to keep going. You don't let it dishearten you, even when things don't go well, and even when things don't go great. I feel like sometimes we have such built up expectations for things. So maybe that's another thing, is just squash your expectations. Don't go into it thinking anything. Just go into it. And then, you might be pleasantly surprised. Maybe your game actually is really awesome. But if it turns out that the game that you've worked on forever is just not very good, or at least just not very good for the couple people that you played it with, right? Because that could also be the thing. Right? Maybe this game's just not for them. That's the way it goes sometimes. But if you go into it without expectation, I think you're much more likely to have a good experience and get better feedback, get better notes that you can write down for things, because you're not sitting there so worried about anything. It just is. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, so often we get into this trap of thinking in terms of good and bad, when I feel like most things just are. With a big enough time horizon, sometimes good things turn bad and sometimes bad things turn good. I mean, there are plenty of people who won the lottery and thought, "Oh, this is the best day of my life," and then 5 years later they're bankrupt and their family hates them, and life is just in shambles. And so that was something good that turned bad. It's like, well, I don't know. It just is. These things, they just are. And so just sit down at a playtest, go to your local game store or go to a convention, take your game with you, and just build up the courage to ask. It's kind of like dating. If you never get the courage to walk across the room and tell somebody your name, I know we live in a day and age where you just swipe right or left or I don't even know which direction to swipe. But anyway, like I know we live in that. But if you really want to find somebody worth finding, you're probably gonna meet them in the real world, and at least at some point. And so you got to get up enough courage to walk across the room, introduce yourself, and just ask and say, "Hey, I've got a game." If, that's why these playtest events are so great. The Unpubs and Protospiels and the playtest rooms at conventions, because everybody knows why you're here, right? It's not awkward or uncomfortable for you to ask somebody to play a prototype. That's why we're here. Proto ATL in Atlanta is an excellent event. I highly recommend. I've been to that one. It's great. I had a lot of fun. Get a lot of good feedback there. And so just do it. I know it can be intimidating, but you got it. You got this. Again, I believe in you. I think you can. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, then you're already in the right spot. Then you're already in the right place. You've already kind of got your mindset thinking towards, you're already being intentional. And so just do it. Just go do it. And if it doesn't work out, I don't know, do it again. Put your reps in. That's all you can do. Next one. Have you tried implementing games or game designs into homeschooling? If so, what have you found works well? So if you don't know, I think I've mentioned this several times on the podcast, but my wife and I, we homeschool our kids. We have 4 children, various ages. And yeah, we just decided, we started doing it in Honduras. Even before the pandemic, it was just a better fit for us, kind of where we were living up in the mountains there in Honduras, to just homeschool. And that was just kind of a better situation. And the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh, well, we're already doing this, but we got a lot better at it. And then as we moved back to the States, just based on grade levels and based on where every kid is at. Anyway, we just, it wasn't some big political thing or anything like that, but we just found it's a good fit for us. I like the flexibility, being able to be like, hey, let's go do something on Thursday at 11 a.m. because we can. And when you come back, you can finish your school then. I like that flexibility. And I like being able to just teach my kids exactly what I want them to know at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, when I'm like, hey, let's talk about how to make a good YouTube thumbnail. Let's talk about these things. So I like that. As far as games and homeschooling, yeah, we use games all the time. Games are wonderful to kind of break the ice, kind of get things going, get kids into, all right, we're not just going to dive right into history or chemistry or whatever. Let's play a game first. And that kind of gets kids warmed up, or as a reward, or as a competition. Sometimes using like dexterity games, especially with my younger kids, that's fun, kind of getting them, used to using their hands and eyes and all the coordination and things that go along with that. But I don't know that we use it as far as like educational. You could. There's plenty of really good education games out there that are actually fun. They're actually not just bland, dry, 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, move a space kind of thing. But I think don't overthink it. Don't put pressure on it. Like, just have some fun. Also, finding ways to teach kids the business side of things, right? To talk about, okay, here's why the back of the box looks like this. Here's what all of this information means. Here's what a barcode is. Here's what all these little country codes or all these, all the different stuff. To talk about the business side, talk about, okay, I'm assuming based on my experience, how much this game costs to manufacture. Okay, here, the box costs this. Here, these components, these cards. Talking about that side, talk about the marketing, talking about the colors, talking about the graphic design. Like, there's so many cool things that you can bring up, bring to your kids' awareness, while you're playing the game. And again, they don't care necessarily. You're not going to change their life with the graphic design nuances of the rule book, but it's planting seeds, right? It's getting them thinking in different terms. When I was growing up, nobody talked to me about business. Nobody talked to me about marketing. Nobody talked to me about any of that stuff, and it wasn't their fault. They didn't know either. My parents didn't know anything. They were factory workers, and we lived in a single wide trailer for a while, and it just wasn't something on their radar to sit down and be like, okay, let's talk about the nuances of the tax code. And so, thinking about my opportunity and all the experience I have now, I'm trying to pass it on to my kids. One thing that really helped me as a parent was understanding and realizing, kind of figuring out, I'm not raising kids, I'm training adults. And that's a very different thing. And so, whenever time comes for them to go off to college, go out into the world, whenever that is, that they are prepared, that they're ready to go. And if I can use games to kind of help them get there, awesome. That works out for everybody. Oh, also getting them to playtest your prototypes and calling it, school time. Hey, that works too. Especially if you design a game for families. Or also, my kids are getting a little bit older, so they can play a little more complicated games now. But that works too. All right, next question. How do you transition from full-time day job to full-time game designer? Okay, a couple paths. One is to get a job working for a board game publishing company. Funko has hired lots of people that I know. Asmodee owns 74% of the industry at this point. Get a job with them. But there are certain companies that are pretty big. Usually, they have access to lots of IPs, like Marvel and Star Wars and all the different things that go with being able to get into Walmart and Target and sell a lot of copies to a lot of people. So get a job with one of them, and that's a pretty cool gig, right? You get a steady paycheck, you get benefits more likely with insurance and different things. A lot of those jobs you can work remotely, or at least kind of remote-ish, where you have to be in a certain state and you have to come in certain times a year, meet at conventions. Like there's different things like that. But that's one way that I've seen a lot of people in the industry go full time as game designers. Now the downside to that is you don't necessarily get to choose which games you work on. Like you might have a kind of a say, but overall, the company or the people above you are like, "Hey, here's the games that we're working on. Bob, you're doing this one, and Steve, you're doing this one, and Susan, you're over here." And so you kind of get assigned projects, and you might, you have a little say here and there, but it's not like, "Oh, I've got this passion project. I'm going to make it. I'm going to bring it to life here working for this company." It's like probably not. So, but you're still full time. You're still making money designing games. The other path is to design games that a lot of people buy, and either license it to publishers or publish them yourself. But to go full time as strictly a game designer, like you're not publishing your own games, you're gonna have to design some hits, like some evergreen, award winning, doing really well, selling a lot of copies every single year to be able to actually make real money. Now, if you're single and you don't mind living in the middle of nowhere, and your cost of living can go way down, and you don't mind sacrificing, then you don't have to design quite as many hits, quite as many games. But overall, you're just going to have to design some really quality games. And another downside is, all right, so you design a game, you pitch it to a publisher, they love it, they think, oh man, this is going to make $1 zillion. There's still a delay, right? It's still a pretty good lag between them signing it and maybe giving you, $500, $1,000, whatever in advance. But then it takes, 2 years for the game to come out. There's development work, wherever you are in the queue line of their pipeline, they've got other games in front of you. Then if you run a crowdfunding campaign, then you got to finish the game, and then it's got to get manufactured, and then it's got to get out to backers, and it's got to get out to reviewers and out to game stores and customers, and then stuff starts rolling in. Oh, this is a great game. It becomes a hit, and then people want to buy it 3 years later, right after you signed it. So it takes time. I think that's another thing that kind of keeps coming up over and over again. Be intentional and realize this stuff takes time. But yeah, those are kind of the two paths that I understand. All right, next question. How done, quote unquote, should your game or prototype be before pitching it to a publisher? That's a good question. Done enough. My rule of thumb is I want the game to be done enough to the point where after I pitch it, if the publisher says, "Ooh, I want to take this with me," or if it's an online pitch that they say, "Ooh, can you send this to me now?" That the game is good to go, right? It's already playable. It's already basically done. 90-ish% done. Maybe there's some things that need to be tweaked and some numbers that need to be balanced and different things like that. But have the rule book ready to go. Have as much of the game finished-ish as you can, just in case they love it and they want to play it now. Like they want to take it back to the hotel room with them. They want to take it home. They want you to mail it to them immediately. Just be ready for that, right? Because I think that's a perfect case scenario. That's a perfect world. And so be prepared for massive success, right? Be prepared for the perfect thing to happen. And so whatever that looks like for your game in particular, just make sure it's at that point. All right, next question. With so many games on the market, what are some of your strategies to determine if a game's mechanisms or general design is novel? Novel. Okay, so novel being new, unique, interesting, set apart. How novel do you want it to be? Right? You got to be careful not being too novel, because then people don't understand it. That's kind of the downside of being like wildly creative, is that people don't understand you until after you're dead. And so don't make something so unique that people are like, what is this? I don't know. Novel enough? Novel. It depends, right? So I'm looking at experience. This might be, deck building game number 4,722, but is the experience new? Does it bring something interesting to the table that I haven't seen a deck building game do before? Right. And that could be mechanically, it could be thematically, it could be experientially, but like, what are some interesting nuances, interesting things that this game is doing that's going to create a new emotion, a new feeling, a new experience for me, the player? And that could be, not new mechanisms, but it could just be a new intersection of mechanisms, right? It could be, mixing deck building with area control, in some kind of way, or mixing social deduction with worker placement. Like whatever you're doing, like you can use tried and true ideas. You've seen games that use these mechanisms. It worked really well. It's a lot of fun. Okay, pull that out. Ooh, this other idea over here. Okay, that sold a zillion copies. That works. Pull that out. What if we put those two things together? And now we've got a new game. So I think that's what I would be looking for. If people are saying, "Oh, this is just pandemic but in space," it's like, "Oh, okay, maybe that's not quite new enough." Now, if they say, "Oh, this reminds me of pandemic," there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a bad thing. But if people are saying, "Oh, this is a lot like," or "This is just like," or "This is okay thematically different, but this is kind of the same game as X, Y, or Z," maybe go back to the drawing board and figure out how you make something new and different, more novel. To your question. But yeah, as far as like strategies, I don't know, not really a strategy. It's just play a lot of games, watch a lot of Dice Tower reviews, and shut up and sit down reviews, and kind of have an idea of what's going on in the marketplace. And then when you're looking at games, you're playing your own prototypes. You kind of have a feeling, kind of know, but you kind of have to have your finger on the pulse of the market in general. So be aware of that. Game design is not something that works very well in complete isolation, right? One, you have to have other people to help you get the game to a place where it's fun, right? You have to have playtesters and developers and people like that. But also, you can't just like disappear off into the wilderness and then come back a year later. It's like, well, what's changed? How is the market different now? So, just some things to be aware of. All right, next one. What has been your most memorable moment playing a board game thus far in life? Well, I've had a few. Most of which I've already talked about on the show, but kind of my top three: playing Shadows over Camelot with my wife's family, and her grandmother was the traitor and nobody expected that, and then she won the game, and it was just this like ridiculous moment as she was like about to place the final catapult, which is one of the ending, game ending triggers, and we were like, no, 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 no. If you can't do that, if you do that, we'll all lose. And she was like, yeah, I know. And she put it in, and she was like, I win, ha ha ha. And we were all just devastated. So that was a good moment. Another one is playing Ticket to Ride with my friend Randy while he was dying of cancer. And, Ticket to Ride became just this amazing way for him to escape and to have a lot of fun with family and friends. And he played like 1,000 games of Ticket to Ride while he was kind of slowly moving on over to the other side. And yeah, I'll never forget that. And then one of the biggest ones, probably the biggest one, is playing board games with people experiencing homelessness in Atlanta in this just kind of crazy moment where we ran out of food. We were serving lunch at the soup kitchen. We ran out of food. And so we were in the process of getting more food. We had sent some people out to the grocery store. They got lost. And so like we had this like time period of like, okay, sorry. I know we told you that lunch was served, but we didn't expect 300 people to show up. We expected 125. And so we were in this like weird, okay, what do we do? And a guy that was working at the soup kitchen was like, well, this big box of board games got donated to us the other day. Why don't you see if people want to play games? And I thought that was the dumbest idea I've ever heard. But I went up to the front of the room and I was like, hey, sorry, but we got these games. And people loved it. They just started playing Jenga and checkers and chess and all the Battleship and all the kind of basic mass market type stuff. But man, what a cool experience. And every single time after that I took groups to serve lunch at that soup kitchen, which was probably, I mean, it's hundreds and hundreds of times after that. I used to, that was my job, was leading mission trips. And so, every time, hundreds and hundreds of times, we brought games with us. I went out and bought all sorts of games. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Sit down and play games with people, get to the table, and no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, what you got, at home, if you don't have a home, we all speak game, right? We all speak fun. And so be able to sit down with people, share lunch, share a moment, have a game of Jenga. It's just, I don't know. It's as good as it gets. Next question. What is your favorite board game mechanism? I love dexterity. I love anything where the ball is literally in my hands to win or lose. There's no dice. There's no card draw. There's no like, oh, well, this happened here and Bob did that and Susan did that and Ricky over here did that. No, no, no. I'm going to win or lose based on my ability to stack or throw or catch or like do something. I just love it. And you'll notice in my own games, the games I design, there's a lot of dexterity in there. Even if it's not really a dexterity game, I will find a way to bring dexterity into this game where it maybe has no business being, but I think it's cool. I think it's fun. And maybe there's a few more people out there like me. So dexterity all the way. All right, next question. How can a new designer build interest/awareness for their game? Okay, social media is a good way to do it. It's a good friend. I wouldn't say it's a good friend in general, but it could be a good friend to help you get your name out there. I think social media might be the destruction of society, but that's not what we're talking about. So, get in groups. Board Game Design Lab group is a wonderful place to kind of not find buyers, but to find people to help you get awareness, right? To help you link up to the right places. But there's lots of Facebook groups out there. Board Game Revolution is good. The Board Game Geek group, I don't know. I don't spend much time there. Dice Tower group I found to be really good. Anyway, so there's lots of groups. You just kind of have to find a place. Reddit, I don't know. Uh, Reddit's kind of hit or miss. So I don't know. I've had terrible experiences there. I know a lot of other people who have not had a lot of fun there either. But that could be a place to kind of get things going. A lot of these places, though, you got to be careful how you preface or how you like present your game, your idea, what you're working on. Because a lot of places, if it's just a hint of you maybe trying to sell something, they will shut it down, delete your stuff, ban you like immediately. And so you kind of have to be aware of that, and go in with that understanding, right? Now, my thought is be a ladder builder more than you're a ladder climber, right? Always give way more than you take. Always, give until you can't give anymore, and then ask, right? As far as this kind of stuff goes, as a new designer too, I mean, just be patient. Again, it's time. It just takes time. The best way to build awareness is to put out an amazing game. I mean, the best marketing is a great product, right? A product that people tell their friends about, that people buy and then leave good reviews, and then that helps you get more sales. So don't overthink your first design, your first 5 designs. Build a body of work that then you get known for something, right? You get known for making great games. I think that's the best thing you can do. All right, next question. What does your initial game process look like? As in your first solo playtesting right after you've had an idea. So, if you were ever to watch me design a game, it looks like I've had a stroke. It looks like I have had a medical emergency, and that 911 should be called. And maybe I'm not going to make it because a lot of my design process is me sitting in my chair, staring at the table, staring at the components that I've kind of created. Usually these are just like note cards and some dice, maybe some pawns and cubes I've pulled from another game or from whatever. And I'm just staring at the table. And I'm mentally playing the game over and over and over again, trying to figure out, okay, turn 1. I could do this, and I could roll a die. I could move here. I could have these 2 choices. I could have these actions available. But I'm processing all the different things in my head, and I'm not doing anything physically. It's all mental, and I'm kind of playing out the scenarios. Like, okay, what if I do that? Well, no, that's kind of boring. Or what if I do this over here? I don't. Why? Why would you do that? Like, what's the point of? But anyway, I'm just kind of playing the game in my head. So it looks, yeah. What does my process look like? It looks like me looking. It looks like me just staring into the void of my table and trying to figure out, is this any good? Is this idea worth pursuing? Probably not, but maybe I can kind of figure it out. And eventually, I'll start writing more things down and creating a better looking prototype. But it's a lot of just staring at my stuff. And last question: what types of games are there not enough of? Great ones. There's not enough great games. A lot of good, a lot of really good games out there. Not a ton of great ones. Not a ton of games that are going to stand the test of time. With so many games coming out, roughly 1,000 games come out at Gen Con every year. On top of all the Kickstarter campaigns, on top of all the reprints, on top of all the things in the marketplace, and there's a lot of really good things out there. We were in just an incredible time of good choices when it comes to games. But when it comes to which of these games are people still going to be playing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Very few. Very few of those. And so as a designer, I think it's tough because it's like, what does it take to go from good to great? Time, like we've been talking about. But I don't know, there's just some little extra something in there, extra little nuance, extra little twist on the experience to take a game from being, oh, that was really good, to that's my favorite game of all time. That's my top 10 in my top 10 list of games ever made. And how do you, as a designer, take things to that next level? And that's the literally the $1 million question as far as all this goes. But yeah, we just need more great games, and that means putting more time and effort in. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this mailbag episode, this little Q&A, and this was fun. Just kind of sit down and go through a bunch of questions, and hopefully you found some good nuggets of wisdom, some ideas in there. And yeah, I can do more of these. I've got, 90 more questions I can pull from. And, if you ever have a question, feel free to send me an email, boardgamedesignlab@gmail.com. But good luck out there. I mean, it's tough. We're in weird times everywhere in life, especially creative life. It's like, what does it look like to do this? Can you make a living from this? How? It, I don't know. It's strange, right? It's such a strange time to be alive, but also amazing, right? We have so many opportunities in front of us. Too many, probably too many opportunities. And so the challenge of modern life is focus. It's figuring out, what do I put my attention on. And with so many things trying to pull on us, these little black mirrors in our pocket, right? These little phones that are just eating up our lives, pulling our focus away, pulling our attention. And so how can we as designers put our attention on things that really matter? And in our case, it's creating experiences for other people, right? Other opportunities for people to have fun, people we've never met, people we will never meet, right? Different parts of the world, that our game could land on their table and create a fun, enjoyable experience for them to have, to create memories with people that they care about. So, closing thought is, let's be really good. Let's be good to each other. Let's help each other. Everybody's fighting a hard battle right now. But how, as designers, can we put our attention and our focus on the things that matter? And in our case, it's bringing joy to people's lives, especially in some hard times. But anyway, again, thanks for listening. Thank you so much for being part of the Board Game Design Lab community, and good luck with everything you got going on right now.